Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butch-Tester. You guys know who I am, and you know what I like to do on my show. Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on a fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about my guest. I'll be spending time today with Cheryl Thompson, award-winning investigative correspondent for National Public Radio and an associate professor of journalism at George Washington University. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea because we are about to get started. Hello, Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with
Hi.
Dr. Angela.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Now, I cannot wait to talk to you about the all that you do, but I realize that I am introducing you potentially to some new listeners out there. So before we get started, I want to ask, tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
Well, I am born and bred in Chicago on Chicago's South Side. And as you mentioned, I'm an investigative reporter for NPR. And let's see, I am an associate professor. I teach investigative journalism at George Washington University here in DC, where I have been, oh my gosh, I've been in DC, for more than 20 years. I came here for work and never left.
Gotcha, gotcha. I love it. I love it. Now, your career has been devoted to uncovering the truth and preserving stories that really matter. When did you first sense that journalism was more than just someone telling us uh, the story of the day? When did you realize that that was your calling and your purpose?
Well, when I was a kid, there was a broadcaster, and I wanted to be like her. But it wasn't really until after I got into the business and I started doing sort of investigative journalism. And one of my early stories, I realized like, it got someone fired from a big position because they were doing something, they shouldn't have done. And that's when I realized the power of the pen, that it's
Mhm.
really important to make sure you got everything right because it can alter lives and change careers.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, one of the things that you speak on as well as myself that I absolutely love that you do, and that is legacy. How was it growing up knowing that you are a daughter of a legend? How did you understand the resilience, the discipline, the service, the fortitude that your father was displaying for the world?
It's so funny. I say that I'm the youngest of three and I have two older brothers. And I really kicked myself that I didn't pay closer attention to the stories that he told about his
Mhm.
military time because I just didn't care as a girl growing up, right? I just I was a girly girl. I was a daddy's girl though. He couldn't move without me being right there. But I just didn't pay close attention. And I've seen the pictures and I know people used to come by the house, guys that he served with and visit. But, it was just one of those things where now I look back and go, man, oh man, how I wish I had really documented more than I did.
Absolutely. And I have to agree with you then. Now, for those who don't know, her father was one of the great and mighty Tuskegee Airmen. And when we were coming up, our parents, our grandparents, our parents, friends, church members were so humble about who they were and the work that they did. So many times we don't find out until we're reading an obituary that that person did this awesome and amazing thing. If you think about Hidden Figures, for example, that's
Mhm.
why it was called Hidden Figures, right? Because we did not know. So, as you can see, so many times they simply don't brag about what they do, but boy, do we need to continue to tell their stories. And I'm glad that you are. Now,
That's so
speaking
true,
of,
though. That's so
mhm,
true that you say that because they didn't, it was a different generation back then, right? And
yeah.
my dad was very reserved and very quiet and he focused on his family but now that I look back, there were so many things like, he was a little league coach and the name of his baseball team was called the Bombers. Right? I
Aw,
mean, like so appropriate. Um,
right?
and it also explains why I drive like I do, because he had a heavy foot. And he taught me to drive, and I was like, oh, now that explains a lot.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And what an inspiration. And I think that we need to continue to tell the stories to definitely inspire the next generation because far too often we forget to tell the stories of the pilots, of all of the pilots. And if you can see yourself as someone flying the plane, then you never know how that allows for a child to dream, right? To walk in the purpose that may be for their lives as well. So I love that you're telling the story. Now, speaking of telling the story,
Hmm.
your upcoming book, Forgotten Souls, it focuses on the 27 Tuskegee Airmen who never returned home, unfortunately. What moved you to search for the stories that history perhaps left unfinished?
Well, when I was working before I came to NPR, I spent 22 years at the Washington Post. And one day I was in the newsroom. One of my colleagues had done this amazing story on the remains of what the government thought were belonged to missing Tuskegee Airmen, and they were found in Austria. And so he did. The reporter was a wrote a lot about history, and so he did this amazing story. And he knew, about my dad somewhere along the line. I mentioned it, and probably ad nauseum, but I said to him when I saw the story, and I said, "Do you think there are others who are missing over there?" And he says, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "That's your book, like you did this great story.
Mm,
That's your book." And he says, "No, Cheryl, this is your book." And so that's
mm,
how
mhm.
and I'm of course paraphrasing him, but that was the gist of it. And it still took me a couple of years to figure it out because I thought, I've been in this business as a journalist, a working journalist for, 30 plus years. And I thought I could do a news story. I could do an investigation. I could write a feature story, but a book, it was kind of overwhelming. It was daunting, the thought of doing it. So I thought about it for a couple more years and I thought, would anybody read this? Would anybody buy this? And what would I write about that hadn't been written about before? Because there's
Mhm.
tons of stuff out there on the Tuskegee Airmen, but not on these missing men.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started. And so I, just started researching and figuring out like how to do this. And I knew someone who was a book agent and she took me on and that's how it started.
Mhm. And I'm so glad you did because the answer is absolutely yes. There are lots of people like me who love to read not only just about history, but about those missing pieces
Mm.
that really help kind of bridge it all together. So I'm so glad that you did. Well, Cheryl, it is time for us to take a very short break. But before we do, I'm pretty sure people want to reach out to you and they want to be able to reconnect after today's broadcast. What is one of the best ways to do that? What's your website?
My website is Cheryl W. Thompson. It's CHERYL W. Thompson, THOMPSON .com. And you can find information on the book. You can find information about me, my dad, others, tour dates that are upcoming, and reach out that way. I'm also on X at Cheryl WT. You can find me on LinkedIn, Cheryl W. Thompson on LinkedIn, and I'm on Instagram. Don't ask me that website because I don't go to Instagram as much as I should, but I am on Instagram.
All right. Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can visit. And of course, the book is available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. We'll be back right after this.
discovery. No, just a sec.
What would it look like if we listened more? Could the right voice, the right set of words, bring us all just a little closer? Get us to open up, even push us further? It could, if we took the time to listen. The most inspiring minds, the most compelling stories. Download Audible and listen for a change.
The Power of She, encouraging women to embrace their strengths. The Power of She, encouraging women to embrace their strengths, is an inspiring self-help book that aims to empower women to unlock their full potential and live their best lives. This book is written by pastoral counselor, empowerment coach, Dr. Angela Chester, who has extensive experience in coaching and mentoring women. This book is filled with powerful insights, examples of women who have overcome obstacles and achieved great success in their personal and professional lives. It covers a range of topics, including building self-confidence and self-esteem, setting and achieving goals, cultivating a positive mindset, a review of women's empowerment over the years, and issues affecting women and their growth. The Power of She, encouraging women to embrace their strengths, is a must-read for any woman who wants to unlock her full potential and live a fulfilling life. It is a powerful reminder that every woman has the strength and resilience to overcome challenges and achieve great things. The Power of She, encouraging women to embrace their strengths, available at drangela.chester.com and, of course, on Amazon or wherever books are sold.
For many people, a breast cancer diagnosis can feel like a battle they're facing alone. But we are in this together because there are mothers, our sisters, our daughters, our friends. NBCF rallies and screening, supporting, and serving communities across the country. Because every woman matters. Every story is powerful. Every voice makes a difference.
Just beat breast cancer.
And every dollar helps. Together, we rise. Are you in?
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Cheryl W. Thompson, award-winning investigative correspondent for NPR and an associate professor of journalism at George Washington University. We're going to jump back into our conversation. Cheryl, I love that you have, and I said it before, that you decided to go through with this project. So, in researching these pilots, you connected with families, I'm pretty sure, whose stories had gone unheard for decades, that people didn't necessarily know how to take their stories or understand their stories because they weren't on the list with the other men. What did listening teach you about the power of connection and how they were able to express themselves about their departed loved one?
Well, one reason I think nobody reached out to them, right? So nobody asked them about their stories. Right. And
Mm,
I say that I'm speaking very generally because there were a couple of people, who had come along, like there was somebody who wrote like a book on planes or something. I don't recall, but one of the pilots was in there, but it wasn't really about the families and who these people were and who these pilots were to their family and what they meant. And
mhm,
so when I found people, and sometimes I stumbled across relatives. I remember looking through the National Archives, and there was a letter in there from a woman whose dad was an airman and who was missing, and she was trying to get information about him or his medals or something. I remember the letter from the government said, "I'm sorry, we're going to need more proof as to who you are." And she didn't know who to reach out
Mhm.
to. And so, I jotted down that name. And then there was another woman who was the daughter of one whose name was on a document. So I found a lot of things. I found family members through the archives of just searching and kind of knowing,
Mhm.
not really know what I'm looking for, but know that if I see a name, I'm going to know to write it down and try to find that person. And when I reached out to them, the first thing I said was, my dad was a Tuskegee Airman, and I'd love to talk to you about, your brother, your dad, your uncle. And
Mhm.
they were all welcoming. They were all just, I mean, it was almost like they were waiting for someone
Yeah.
to pick up the
Hmm.
phone and call them.
Like finally, someone wants to include
Finally.
us in the conversation.
That's right.
Yes. Oh
That's
my
right.
goodness.
And oh, the
Hmm.
stories they had. Oh, the stories they had. I remember there's one woman, and I keep in touch with all these people, because I've spent
Hmm.
time with them and I've talked to them, over and over and been to visit them. And I remember talking to one woman, and she was a sister and the only surviving sister. And she said to me, I asked her, she was one of the first people I called, and we were talking, and she was pleasant enough, but she wasn't, at the initially warm and fuzzy. I think she was a little skeptical, and
Hmm.
rightfully so, right? She doesn't
Hmm.
know me. And she's
Right.
older, she's elderly. And so we're
Hmm.
talking, and she was, so I called her back a couple more times. And finally, after I don't know how many phone calls, I said, I'd love to come and visit you. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
And because initially she was like, well, I don't really know a lot about him. I was so young and, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And so when she says, well, sure, you can come and visit. So I said, would you do me a favor? I said, any photos, any letters, anything you have about your brother, if you could, have them for me, that would be great because that would help me tell the story. And she says,
Hmm.
yeah, she says, I probably don't have much, but I'll check. So I get on a plane, I go and visit her, and I get there, and she invites me into like probably what was then, because it was the family homestead. They probably called it the parlor back then. And it's,
Yes. Hmm.
20-foot ceilings, this big rambling house. And I go in, and there is this coffee table filled with like photos and articles and letters. And I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't this the woman who said she didn't have much? Um, but it was a lot of things. I always tell my students that there's always a place to go, right? Because
Yeah.
people react to you differently when you're in front of them than when you're on the phone. And I
Right.
promise you that woman searched high and low for everything she pulled for me, and it was a
Hmm.
gold mine. It was an absolute
Hmm.
gold mine. It was just a treasure chest.
Hmm. And like you mentioned earlier, that's a different generation, and they like the more personal approach. I want to be able to set my eyes on you. I want to see your intention and feel your intention while I'm sharing about my loved one. So I'm pretty sure that she felt comfortable with you by the time it was all said and done. Because that is a remarkable thing to be able to share photos with someone that's very personal. I love that. I love that.
And the
Now,
letters that these people had, the handwritten letters from these men when
yes,
they wrote home, it was just like, it was, you have to realize it was like, what, generations, 80 years ago. And these letters still
right.
exist and they were handwritten, and to hold them and to read them was really inspiring.
Hmm. Hmm. Another
Excuse me.
another thing that we need to make sure that the next generation knows how to read cursive as well, because I'm sure plenty of the letters were written in cursive as opposed to print, and we need to be able to read those letters generations from now. So I love that you mentioned that. Now, as an investigative journalist and as an educator, you've been mentored, but you've also done some mentoring across generations. Why does mentorship matter so much? Why is it so? important for us to make sure that we continue to help the next generation when it comes to excellence and integrity.
Because that's how they learn. Right. And
Mhm,
I always said when I came along in this business, I didn't have anyone who looked like me as my mentor. I had mentors, but none was Black. They were all
mhm,
white,
mhm,
often male, couple women. And I just thought if I'm ever in a position to help someone in this business and to help pave the way and make it a little easier for them than it was for me, I would
mhm,
gladly do it. And I love doing it because I find that people I mentor are eager to learn. They want to know what I've been through. They want to know how I figured it out, even though I'm still figuring it out.
mhm.
They want to know that. And so, I figure if somebody's that eager to want to soak up whatever lessons I can teach them, whatever wisdom I can impart on them, then I'm happy to do it.
Mhm, mhm. Agreed, agreed. Not everyone wants to hear your stories, but those who do, share it with them. I could not agree with you more. They see something in you, and hence they want to hear about your life and the wisdom that you can share. That is so true. Now, in a time when historical markers and memories are unfortunately um, being removed, or they are deteriorating, or they were temporarily removed and funding just wasn't there to put it back, whatever the reason, right? Whatever the challenge. What role do you feel that professional journalists such as yourself, or I'll say a lay journalist, someone like myself, and the storytellers out there play in protecting collective memory? Now that we have social media, we have the internet, not everyone is a trained a professional journalist like myself. I am not. But we try to make sure that the stories get out there. Why is that so important?
Well, we have to keep telling the story, right? We have to just keep at it. And that's the only way it's going to still exist. But it's
Mhm.
really important, particularly now with all the AI and everything that's going on. It's like and disinformation, we have to be able to separate fact from fiction.
Mhm. Yeah, that is so important. And I think that has uh unlocked a new fear for many people, is that um, as we age physically, that we are not going to be able to tell the difference. By time we are the seniors, by time we are the grandparents or the great grandparents, AI is going to be so smooth that we won't be able to tell the difference. So I can definitely understand that. Let's not take the person out of personable. I love it. I love it. Well, my last question for you, and I could definitely rack your brain about a lot. Like I said, I love history, so I'm enjoying speaking with you. But as we close, what do you hope people carry with them after hearing the stories of not just the familiar Tuskegee Airmen, but the full story that includes many that are untold or the forgotten Tuskegee Airmen? Not just about the past, but about how we can live that forward today.
You know what would be amazing for me, as far as I'm concerned, would be
Mhm.
if the government would, someone, doesn't even have to be the government, someone would, go back over to Europe, try to find the remains of these people because their families never got closure. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, their children who are now in their 80s and their siblings who are now in their 90s,
Yeah.
they live every day not really knowing what happened. And
Yeah.
to just have a remain would be closure for them. And
Mhm.
they deserve that. They deserve that.
Mhm. Mhm. I have to agree with you. I've always said that to me, missing is worse than deceased.
Yeah.
Deceased, there's a closing, you're able to go to a gravesite, and place flowers, but missing is the uncertainty is just so far worse. So absolutely. Perhaps someone at some point will take on that challenge and hope to close the many chapters for those loved ones.
I got to tell you
Well,
one. Can I say this
mhm.
final thing? The woman, one of the daughters of an airman is now in her mid 80s, and she said to me just a couple of days ago, it was sometime this week, and we were talking, and she said, she said, I'm saving my pennies because, I want to
Mhm.
be able, if they find my dad, I want to be able to afford to go to the site and say goodbye.
Mhm.
80
Mhm.
years later. 80 years later,
Mhm.
she still hopes. And so they have hope.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so they're somewhere, there's those airmen are somewhere out there. Some of them, unfortunately, are probably, buried deep in the sea. But
Yeah.
but at least, they just want some kind of closure, or at
As
least
we all
somebody
would
who
want to.
cares.
Right.
That's right. That's
Right.
right. Because
Right.
their parents died, the parents of these men died, never, not
Never
never knowing
knowing.
what happened, never having a body to bury, never having anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Well, we can definitely agree and pray that that will happen in our near future, as opposed to way out there. I tell you. Well, Cheryl Thompson, thank you so much for spending time with me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I've enjoyed my conversation with you today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Absolutely. Now, of course, we know that your book is available on Amazon and wherever books are sold, but if someone wants to reach out to you personally, what is your website, please?
It is Cheryl, CHERYL W Thompson, THOMPSON.com. And my Instagram site is at Cheryl WT1. And
I
my
love,
I'm on X at Cheryl WT.
I love it. Thank you again, Cheryl, for being a guest on the show today.
Thank you so much again.
And listeners, thank you for spending time with us here today as well. You could have been anywhere and you chose to spend it with us. And I thank you for doing so. I hope that we have once again enlightened, inspired, and empowered you. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.